I drove home for Christmas with excitement bubbling in my chest. The promotion to senior software engineer had finally come through, and I was eager to share the news with my family. As I walked through the front door, the conversation in the living room abruptly stopped. My brother Kyle glared at me with unexpected hostility. "No one wants you here," he said coldly. I looked to my parents for support, but they just nodded in agreement. In that moment, 29 years of seeking their approval shattered. I had always felt like an outsider in my own family, but never expected such blatant rejection. If you have ever experienced family betrayal, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe for the full story of how I rebuilt my life after being discarded by the people who should have loved me unconditionally. The tension in my childhood home felt suffocating as I stood there, gift bags still dangling from my fingers, staring at the three people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. The silence stretched uncomfortably until I finally found my voice. "What do you mean no one wants me here?" I asked, hoping there was some misunderstanding. "I thought we were celebrating Christmas together." Kyle crossed his arms and leaned back against the fireplace mantel. At 31, my older brother had always been the golden child, athletic, charming, and somehow always the center of our parents' world. "We have been talking about the James problem for months now," he said. "You showing up a day early just proves our point, always trying to steal the spotlight." I set my bags down slowly, trying to process what was happening. Our family dynamic had always been strained, but this level of hostility was new. Growing up in Portland, I was always the odd one out. While Kyle dominated the high school football field and brought home trophies, I was buried in books and computer code. My academic achievements rarely earned more than a cursory nod from Thomas and Linda, my parents. Kyle could win a local game, and they would throw a party. I could win a state science competition and get a quick good job before they returned to fawning over whatever Kyle was doing. I had worked twice as hard for half the recognition throughout my childhood. When I was accepted to the University of Washington, with a partial scholarship, my parents seemed more concerned about who would help Kyle train for his recreational softball league than celebrating my achievement. Still, I maintained what I thought was a functional relationship with them. When I moved to Seattle 5 years ago for my job at a growing tech company, the distance actually seemed to help. Our interactions became limited to holidays and occasional phone calls, which meant fewer opportunities for disappointment. This year had been different, though. I had been working tirelessly on a project that finally earned me the promotion I deserved. For once, I had news that even my achievement-averse family couldn't ignore. I had called ahead to make sure they were expecting me for Christmas, though they seemed strangely reluctant to confirm my visit. Still, I chalked it up to holiday stress and decided to surprise them by arriving a day early. That decision now seemed like a terrible mistake as I stood in the living room watching three pairs of eyes regard me with thinly veiled disdain. "I brought gifts," I said, weakly gesturing to the bags. I had spent weeks selecting perfect presents for each of them. An autographed jersey from Kyle's favorite player, a gardening system my mother had mentioned, wanting, and a specialized fishing rod for my father. "Just throwing your money around as usual," Kyle snorted. My mother sighed heavily. "James, maybe you should have called before coming early. I wanted to surprise you," I explained. "I thought it would be nice to have an extra day together." My father finally spoke up. "Your brother has news of his own, you know. Not everything is about you and your fancy job." I looked between them, genuinely confused. "I never said it was." "What news? Did something happen?" Kyle exchanged glances with our parents before responding with a triumphant smile. "Sophia and I are engaged. We were just discussing wedding plans when you barged in." "That is amazing news," I said, sincerely stepping forward to congratulate him. "I had no idea you were even thinking about proposing." "When did this happen?" "2 weeks ago," my mother said. "We wanted to make this Christmas special for Kyle and Sophia." "And now you show up early with your promotion news," Kyle added bitterly, always trying to overshadow me. I felt like I had stepped into some alternate reality. "How did you know about my promotion?" "I haven't told anyone yet. Darren mentioned it when I ran into him last month," Kyle said. "He was going on and on about how successful you are in Seattle, how you are some big shot now. Darren was supposedly my best friend from high school. I had confided in him about the potential promotion during a quick catch-up call, but it wasn't finalized then." The fact that he had shared this with Kyle before I could announce it myself felt like another betrayal. I wasn't trying to overshadow anything I said. I had no idea about the engagement. That is genuinely great news, Kyle. But my words fell on deaf ears. The damage was apparently done long before I had even arrived. You have always been like this, my mother said, her voice unusually cold. Always making us feel inadequate with your achievements. I stared at her in disbelief. Making you feel inadequate. Mom, I have spent my entire life trying to make you proud. By moving away and acting like you are better than us, my father chimed in. Like staying in Portland wasn't good enough for you. The accusations kept coming, each one more painful than the last. My family had apparently been harboring these resentments for years, constructing a narrative where my pursuit of my own dreams was somehow an indictment of their life choices. I moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. It had nothing to do with leaving you behind or thinking I was better than anyone. Kyle scoffed. Right. That is why you only visit on holidays and make those little comments about how primitive our internet setup is or how you could never go back to driving a car without all those fancy features. I racked my brain trying to remember making such comments. Had some offhand remark been interpreted as an insult? Had my attempts at sharing my life been seen as bragging? I never meant to come across that way. I said sincerely. I am sorry if I have. Sorry. Doesn't change the fact that you look down on us, my mother said. She hesitated before adding, I have been asking the extended family not to bring up your job or your condo when Kyle is around. It just makes things uncomfortable. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My own mother had been actively suppressing any mention of my achievements to protect Kyle's feelings. All those family gatherings where conversations awkwardly shifted when I entered the room suddenly made sense. I have never competed with Kyle, I said. I have always been proud of him. You have a funny way of showing it, my father said. Always going on about your career while Kyle is trying to build something here. Some of us value family over money, you know. The irony of being lectured about family values while being ostracized by my own was not lost on me. I took a deep breath and tried one more approach. Kyle, I am truly happy about your engagement. Sophia is wonderful, and you two will have a great life together. In fact, I reached for my wallet. I would like to help with the wedding expenses. Consider it an engagement gift. The offer was sincere. Despite everything I wanted to show them, I cared about Kyle's happiness. My brother's face flushed with anger. See, this is exactly what I am talking about. You think you can just throw money at everything. We don't need your charity. It is not charity, I protested. It is what family does. Are you even family anymore? My mother asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. We moved through an excruciating dinner where every attempt at conversation was met with passive-aggressive comments or uncomfortable silence. I tried reminiscing about positive childhood memories, but each one was countered with a different version where I had somehow ruined things for Kyle. After dinner, I excused myself to bring my bags to my room, only to discover my childhood bedroom had been completely transformed into a home gym focused around a weight bench and Kyle's exercise equipment. We didn't think you would mind, my mother said from the doorway. You are hardly ever here, and Kyle needed the space for his workouts. Where are my things? I asked, noticing all traces of my childhood had been erased from the room. In boxes in the garage, my father answered, appearing behind my mother. We were going to tell you eventually. I nodded numbly and headed to the garage to see what remained of my childhood. There, stacked carelessly in a corner, were several dusty boxes labeled simply, James Stuff. As I opened them, I discovered many items had suffered water damage from a leak in the roof directly above them. What hurt even more than the damaged memorabilia was what I found when I returned inside. While looking for extra towels in the hallway closet, I discovered a display that made my stomach drop. My parents had created what Kyle jokingly called the Wall of Shame, a collection of letters I had sent home with passages highlighted and annotated with mocking comments. We thought some of the things you wrote were pretty hilarious, Kyle explained when he caught me staring at the display, always going on about your projects and your fancy friends. Those letters represented times when I had genuinely tried to share my life with my family. To discover they had been treating them as objects of ridicule was devastating. Later that evening, As voices carried through the thin walls of the guest room where I had been relegated, I overheard Kyle telling our parents that he hadn't actually planned to invite me to his wedding. Sophia insisted we should, he said. But I told her you would probably be too busy with your important job anyway. The most painful revelation came when my mother agreed that it might be better if I didn't attend. It would just take attention away from Kyle's big day, she said. James always has to be the center of attention. That night, as I lay on the uncomfortable pull-out sofa in the guest room, I finally allowed myself to see the truth I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't a momentary misunderstanding or a holiday stress-induced outburst. My family had been hoping I would simply stop coming around. They had been actively excluding me, while I desperately tried to maintain a relationship that existed only in my imagination. Sleep evaded me as memories from childhood replayed in my mind, now viewed through a new painful lens. The birthday parties where my friends weren't welcome but Kyle's entire team was invited. The school events my parents missed while never missing a single one of Kyle's games. The graduation dinner that was cut short because Kyle had a date. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern I had refused to acknowledge. I had spent my life chasing approval that was never going to come, measuring my worth against impossible standards and making excuses for people who had no intention of making room for me in their lives. As dawn broke, I made my decision. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no desperate pleas for acceptance. I would leave with the same dignity they had denied me all these years. I packed my bags quietly, taking only the salvageable childhood memorabilia from the garage boxes. The expensive gifts I had brought remained untouched under the Christmas tree. They had rejected them just as they had rejected me. On a sheet of hotel stationery from my wallet, I wrote a brief note. I understand now that my presence is unwanted. I won't impose on you again. I wish you all the best with the wedding and your future plans. James. I placed it on the kitchen counter and slipped out before anyone woke up. There was something liberating about walking away from the house that had never truly been a home to me. Instead of driving back to Seattle, I checked into a hotel in downtown Portland. I needed time to process everything that had happened and decide on my next steps. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to run away from pain. I was going to sit with it, understand it, and find a way forward that didn't involve seeking validation from people determined to withhold it. My first call was to Darren, who answered with surprise at hearing from me during the holidays. "I thought you would be with your family," he said. "I was," I replied, "until I discovered they have been actively trying to exclude me from their lives, and that you have been telling Kyle about my personal business." There was a long pause before Darren sighed. "Look, James, I am sorry about that. Kyle cornered me at the bar, and you know how he can be. He kept saying you never tell them anything, so I thought I was helping by mentioning the promotion possibility." "Have you been feeding him information about me for a while?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Not intentionally," Darren said, which told me everything I needed to know. "But he always asks about you, and he has a way of making it seem like you are all really close." "We are not," I said flatly. "In fact, they have been bad-mouthing me to the entire family for years." Darren's silence was telling. "You knew," I realized. "Everyone knew except me." "I didn't know how bad it was," he admitted, "but there were comments sometimes at hometown gatherings. I thought it was just normal sibling rivalry stuff." After ending that call, I reached out to Dr. Wilson, my high school physics teacher, who had been more of a mentor to me than my own father. His warm voice was a balm to my wounded spirit. "James, my boy, what a wonderful surprise. Merry Christmas." We talked for nearly an hour. Unlike my family, he asked questions about my life and career with genuine interest. When I finally told him what had happened with my family, his response was both compassionate and clarifying. "Some people cannot celebrate others' success because it highlights their own perceived failures," he said gently. "It says everything about them and nothing about you." Those words resonated deeply. For the first time, I considered that perhaps the problem wasn't that I was unworthy of love, but that my family was incapable of giving it unconditionally. "What do I do now?" I asked. "I have always defined myself in relation to them, trying to earn their approval or avoid their criticism. Now, Dr. Wilson said you get to define yourself on your own terms, and perhaps find people who can appreciate you exactly as you are." That conversation marked the beginning of my healing journey. Instead of wallowing in rejection, I decided to create new traditions for myself. I signed up to volunteer at a local shelter's Christmas lunch program, determining that if I couldn't be with family, I could at least make the day meaningful. At the shelter, I met Harold, an elderly man with a remarkably similar story to my own. He had been estranged from his family for decades after they rejected him for pursuing education instead of joining the family business. Best decision I ever made was to stop chasing their approval, he told me, as we served mashed potatoes to the shelter residents. Found my own path, built my own life. Family is who treats you like family son, not who shares your blood. I also met Sarah that day, a nurse volunteering during her time off. She had her own complicated family dynamics and understood the unique pain of holiday estrangement. We connected over shared experiences and ended up having coffee after our volunteer shift ended. For the first time in my life, I experienced a Christmas where I felt genuine acceptance. No walking on eggshells, no measuring my words, no dimming my light to avoid outshining others. Just authentic connections with people who had no agenda beyond human kindness. 3 days passed without any contact from my family. I had temporarily blocked their numbers to give myself space to heal, focusing instead on self-care and building new connections. I extended my hotel stay, explored Portland as a tourist rather than a returning son, and spent more time with Sarah, whose compassionate nature was a stark contrast to the coldness I had experienced from my family. On Christmas morning, I returned to the shelter to help serve the holiday meal. The sense of community and purpose I found there was more fulfilling than any Christmas I had spent trying to earn scraps of approval from my parents and brother. When I returned to my hotel room that evening, I unblocked my phone to find it blowing up with notifications. 12 missed calls from my family members, along with numerous text messages that escalated from angry to increasingly panicked. The first voicemail was from Kyle, his tone irritated. "Where did you go?" Very mature, just disappearing like that. The second was from my mother, slightly concerned, but mostly annoyed. "James, this is ridiculous. Come back to the house immediately." By the sixth call, their tone had changed dramatically. My father's voice was uncharacteristically urgent. "Son, we need to talk to you. It is important. Call us back as soon as you get this." The final messages revealed the true reason for their sudden desire to reconnect. Kyle's fiancée, Sophia, had arrived on Christmas Eve and overheard them discussing my departure. Apparently, she had been horrified by how they had treated me and threatened to reconsider the engagement if they didn't make things right. "Sophia is really upset," Kyle admitted in his message. "She says we were cruel to you." I did not tell her everything exactly how it happened. My mother's final voicemail was the most revealing. "James, there is also a situation with the business. Your father has been meaning to talk to you about it. We could really use your expertise. Please call us back." So there it was. They needed something from me. My brother's relationship was in jeopardy, and the family business was in trouble. Only then did I become worth seeking out. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone in hand, considering my options. The old James would have rushed back, eager to prove his worth and earn their approval. The new James recognized this as an opportunity to establish boundaries and self-respect. After a thoughtful conversation with Sarah, who had quickly become a trusted confidant, I texted my family that I would meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, the following morning. I deliberately chose a public place where emotional outbursts would be constrained and where I could easily leave if necessary. When I arrived at the coffee shop, they were already there, my parents looking worried and Kyle uncharacteristically subdued. Sophia sat beside him, her expression a mix of sympathy and determination when she saw me. James, my mother, began reaching for my hand, which I subtly moved to pick up my coffee cup instead. "We have been so worried." "Have you?" I asked calmly. "That is interesting, considering the last conversation we had included statements about how no one wanted me around." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We may have been a bit harsh. The holidays are stressful." "It was more than harsh," Sophia interjected, giving my brother a pointed look. "From what I heard, it was cruel and completely unwarranted." Kyle had the decency to look ashamed. "I was jealous," he admitted quietly. "You have always been the smart one, building this impressive career while I am still working at Dad's company. When I heard about your promotion, right when I was planning to announce my engagement, I just snapped. We should have defended you," my mother said. "Instead, we encouraged his behavior." We have not been fair to you for a long time, James. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting their discomfort stretch. No, you have not. My father leaned forward. Son, we also need to tell you about the business. We are having some challenges with the new online ordering system. The company that set it up went bankrupt, and we are losing orders left and right. I know you work in software engineering, of course. They needed my professional expertise. The apology was just the price of admission for my help. I am happy to recommend some reliable vendors who could help with your system, I said evenly. I will email you some contacts. We were hoping for a bit more hands-on assistance, my father pressed. I set my cup down carefully. I can provide consultation, but I will not be personally fixing your systems. I have responsibilities in Seattle. The boundaries felt foreign on my tongue, but right in my heart. For the first time, I was not desperately trying to earn their approval through self-sacrifice. Sophia reached across the table and touched my arm gently. I want you to know that I had no idea how they have been treating you. Kyle told me you two were not close because you were always too busy for family. I see now that was not the truth. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciating her honesty. Will you come back to the house? My mother asked. For Christmas dinner, we saved your presents. I thought about the uncomfortable guest room, the converted bedroom, the wall of shame they had created from my letters. No, I have plans with friends today. Their surprise at my refusal was evident. They had expected the same old James who would grasp at any crumb of inclusion they offered. But we are your family, my father said, as if that single fact should override everything else. Yes, you are, I agreed. And I am willing to work on building a healthier relationship with all of you. But that will take time, honesty, and consistent effort on everyone's part. It cannot be fixed with one Christmas dinner. We parted with tentative plans to speak again after the holidays. I provided the business contacts I had promised and agreed to consider attending Kyle and Sophia's wedding, provided things improved between us. The following months brought significant changes to my relationship with my family. I began therapy to process the years of subtle rejection and to develop stronger boundaries. Our interactions became more limited but also more honest. I helped my father's business remotely, but maintained my life in Seattle. Kyle, prompted by both Sophia and his own growing self-awareness, began making genuine efforts to connect without competition. My parents' progress was slower. Old habits of favoritism died hard, but they were trying in their imperfect way. The most positive change, however, was in my own life. I deepened my friendship with Sarah, which gradually blossomed into a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. I cultivated friendships with people who celebrated my successes rather than resenting them. I created new holiday traditions that brought joy rather than anxiety. 1 year after that painful Christmas rejection, I hosted a holiday gathering in my Seattle condo. Sarah helped me prepare the food, and my chosen family of friends filled the space with warmth and laughter. To my surprise, Kyle and Sophia made the trip from Portland a gesture of reconciliation that meant more than any gift. My parents declined the invitation, still uncomfortable with traveling to my territory, as they put it. Our relationship remained a work in progress with steps forward and back. I had accepted that they might never be the parents I had longed for, but we were slowly building something more authentic than the pretense we had maintained for years. As I looked around at the people gathered in my home, I realized that the rejection that had once felt like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of a better one. I had stopped contorting myself to fit into a space that was never designed to hold me, and instead created a life where I could stand tall in my full self. The greatest gift I received that Christmas was not under any tree. It was the understanding that my worth was never dependent on my family's ability to recognize it. It was the freedom that came from walking away from people who could not love me as I deserved to be loved. It was the courage to build the life and relationships I wanted rather than chasing approval I would never receive. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find your true self? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of self-discovery and healing. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop trying to belong where we are not wanted and instead create spaces where we truly belong. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that the family you choose can be more powerful than the family you were born into.